Folks, you better buckle up and strap in because we've got a lot to cover before market open tomorrow. Number one, the stock market has been parabolic all year with little breathing. We've been breaking new record high after new record high, but then on Friday, you saw one of the leaders of this bull market, NVDA, dump some 7%. So are we due for a big breath in overall markets or maybe even a deeper correction, or are markets just going to keep rallying? We'll look at the data and I'll suggest some common sense ways to employ risk management so regardless of what happens, you're relatively safe. Number two, Bitcoin hit a new high this week, and a study just came out saying it could be worth $115K after halving. How likely is this, and what does that mean for crypto miner Mara? Number three, I want to dive into one semiconductor play that I believe will absolutely fly over the coming weeks. This is a big competitor to NVIDIA that we've talked about before, but I want to dive more into why I believe that markets are really discounting it and why this will be relevant over the next week or two. And the only thing I ask in return for all of this is that you hit that ravishing like button, turn on the notification bell, and don't forget to subscribe. And as always, you should never buy or sell a stock just because we talk about it in a video. You need to go off and do your own due diligence and make your own decisions. Also, quick news, our flash sale on ZipTrader options has been extended to tomorrow night. Coupon code alerts will still get you $200 off before Monday night at midnight. If you are ready to learn options and get our alerts, I'll put the link down below. Some of our top recent alerts have been the following: AMD 200 strike calls expiring January 17th, 2025. Those ran some 134% from alert price to highs. I'm still bullish on those. Number two, Palantir 35 strike calls expiring the 21st of June 2024. It ran about 84% alert price to highs. Still bullish on those as well. NVDA 850 strike calls expiring January 17th, 2025. It ran from about 121 to 269.98 at highs, which was a run of about 123% alert price to highs. Now, not all of our ideas are going to run, and some are longer term plays, including some of the ones we mentioned here, but we do our best to bring you well-researched and well-thought-out options alerts in the program, and I'll put the link down below. Coupon code expires tomorrow night. Okay, let's go ahead and get to work. So obviously markets are hot right now, burning hot. The S&P 500 is up nearly 33% from this time last year. The NASDAQ is up 44%, and big tech names are up massively. NVDA is up 281% in the past year. Meta is up 181% in the past year. MSFT, Microsoft, the soft of micro, is up 63% in the past year. However, at the same time, others are really starting to fall and underperform. Apple stock is down 8% year to date, for example. Tesla is down almost 30% year to date. Alphabet/Google is down 2% year to date. And even though the VIX, which goes up when people are hedging against uncertainty, is down 40% in the last year, well, it is up nearly 12% year to date and climbing, meaning that hedges are starting to be put back on this year. So what's going on here? Are we going to see more of the same, or are we going to be heading for a big, deep breathing cycle? Well, back at the start of the year, we looked at data showing that markets tend to rally after the Fed stops hiking, which is indeed the cycle that we are still in right now. Markets tend to go up an average of 8.1% after the hikes stop. But a lot of the above average performance that we've seen historically also has to do with what companies are actually reporting, the earnings that they're printing out, and the price you're paying for earnings once the Fed starts cutting. A mistake a lot of people make is they look at 2021 highs and today's highs and they think, oh, we are trading so much more expensive. Or they look at the 2022 recovery lows and think, oh, okay, how is it possible that we can rally so much for a full recovery without any rate cuts? But the problem is that you're just looking at the raw numbers. You need to realize that the game is completely different. The meaning, the actual meaning behind the numbers on the chart has changed over the last couple of years. Number one reason is, of course, inflation. A dollar today would only buy you 88 cents in 2021. This means just to get back to the prior baseline of earnings, companies would need to earn $1.14 for every dollar, and markets would have to rally 13.8% above all-time highs just to be back and equal to 2021 highs. And with this logic, the 2022 dump was even crazier of a dump than meets the eyes. Markets were down some 25%, but at the same time, inflation of the dollar was some 8 to 9%, meaning this discount was even more severe than met the eyes. The other key point to understand is money is expected to get cheaper in the coming years, not less cheap. In 2022, markets started tanking because we were heading into the steepest hiking cycle in decades, and that has already come and gone. Now it's widely expected that rates are heading down. The only question is when. If Trump wins the election, he's stated he will appoint someone that will lower rates. He originally appointed tweeted Powell and was angry with him for much of the time because he felt easy money printer Powell wasn't easy enough. So certainly his next appointee is going to be even more wild with the money printer. Alternatively, if Biden wins re-election, it's expected he'll keep Powell in charge, and Powell is also signaling lower rates himself. So regardless of which candidate we get a range of easy money policies coming back within the next 6 to 18 months. But another reason why 2021 highs and today's highs are different is because companies are earning different levels of money, and in many cases, that's expected to get more severe. And you look at the S&P PE ratio with forward estimates included. In the beginning of 2021, you were paying a forward PE ratio of 40. Today, it's 26. But if the market decided to stop rallying, we'd start seeing a plummeting in the PE ratio heading into the end of 2024 and 2025. So if you're an investor right now and you're looking at these earnings projected to accelerate dramatically to the upside, you're looking at inflation, all the money we printed from the last 5+ years flowing back into the system, you're looking at rates expected to be cut again. Well, you combine all this together and it's hard to imagine that the overall trajectory isn't going to be upward. Okay, but Charlie, in the short term, are we going to get a breath? Are we going to get a correction? Well, I don't think it's a wild concept to think that we are due for some form of breath cycle. Breathing is a part of every cycle, but this one could be a bit more severe due to the concentration in just a few names. If you look at the companies that contributed the most to the S&P 500 run, the biggest is Nvidia, Meta, Amazon, Eli Lilly, and Microsoft. Just take Nvidia for a second. Nvidia contributed 3.9%. Nvidia's run has been so insane that just to get back to where we were in, say, the beginning of December, we'd have to lose more than half the valuation. And usually in a regular enough dip cycle, you could see a few months of valuation wiped out easily. As we were talking about just the other day, Amazon during its .com bull cycle saw several periods of halving of valuation. So it's certainly not unthinkable to think that NVDA could see a substantial drop, if not a halving, at some point during its bull cycle too, and that likely would cause a big freak out in the overall market. But do I see that happening in the coming months? Probably not. I believe a lesser breath will happen, but that'll just get bought up. We have the vast majority of growth for GPUs and other crucial components of AI coming in the future, and NVDA right now is the biggest player. In terms of the broader market, AI is a big catalyst for driving down costs and driving up productivity, but you also got to remember that we have interest rate cuts coming, more money printing and such, and any sell-off, in my view, is going to be an opportunity. Now, folks, I know that people like to play this little mental game where they say NVDA is a bubble, SPY is a bubble, Bitcoin is a bubble, whatever it is a bubble, and they excuse themselves from feeling bad about missing those gains as they continue to get bigger and bigger because they say, oh, it's a bubble, I'm morally superior, I just don't buy bubbles. Now, we can argue back and forth about whether any given asset is a bubble, but the truth is that momentum can be played responsibly with a stop loss. Even if you think something is in the beginning of a bubble, it doesn't make you smarter, it certainly doesn't make you morally superior to avoid the run because, oh, I don't buy bubbles. The truth is that the momentum can be played responsibly with a stop loss. There's this tweet that Alex from ticker symbol U posted, and it's about NVDA, but it can also be said about anything else. While something is going up, people will scream every month or so that it's a bubble, bubble, bubble. You need to sell. You can't be buying a bubble. And then when it takes a 5% dump from a 10x, all of a sudden they feel really, really good about themselves. But the fact is that this entire uptrend was an opportunity, and it was missed because people didn't understand that risk management for dips and sell-offs is a thing. The prudent move in the market isn't to avoid every stock that's running. It's attacking stocks that are running, taking profits on the uptrend, and then controlling the downside risk for when it inevitably sells back off. Okay, next, let's go ahead and get into Bitcoin. So Bitcoin hit its new all-time highs a few months prior than expected. Usually new highs for Bitcoin come after halving, which this time is happening in April, but I guess Easter came early. Recently, Bitcoin's value briefly surged past the $70,000 mark, indicating a notable level break in its trading price. This surge was followed by a rapid decline, falling approximately 5% to below $67,000, highlighting the volatility that characterizes the cryptocurrency market. Despite these fluctuations, of course, Bitcoin's appeal among investors remains very, very strong, and market speculators are going deep, with Bitcoin traders showing renewed interest in the $200,000 call option, a level of optimism not seen for nearly 3 years, folks, since the last massive bull cycle. On the institutional side, BlackRock's Bitcoin ETF, which was introduced less than 2 months ago, has already amassed more Bitcoin than MicroStrategy, previously the largest corporate holder of Bitcoin. When BlackRock starts buying, you got to know things are up, and I don't know if it's necessarily a good thing, but it is good for the asset price. Maybe they're going to be buying all of humanity with that Bitcoin, I don't know. But anyways, the rapid accumulation underscores the growing institutional interest in Bitcoin and its potential as an investment vehicle, which it is blowing away basically all the other investment vehicles for sure. Meanwhile, developments in decentralized finance, DeFi, are also pretty damn noteworthy. You got to pay attention to these. The total value locked in DeFi protocols has reached $100.1 billion, driven in part by the positive sentiment surrounding Bitcoin right now. However, this figure is still short of the record $189 billion set in November 2021. We'll see if it gets there. I think it will. Furthermore, Bitcoin whales, the large holders of Bitcoin, continue to accumulate more BTC, with the number of Bitcoin addresses holding at least 1,000 BTC increasing. So more and more and more powerful whales. This trend suggests a strong belief in Bitcoin's value and its future growth potential among major investors who tend to accumulate the biggest right before the biggest rallies. Legal and regulatory news have also been very, very prominent. Wyoming has passed a law granting decentralized autonomous organizations legal status, which could have significant implications for the cryptocurrency and blockchain industry by providing these organizations with the ability to enter contracts, open bank accounts, and more. All things that go further to legitimizing the coin of Bit. But overall, I think Bitcoin and broader crypto markets are at a fascinating juncture. Institutional interest in Bitcoin is simply growing. Developments and legal overhauls are happening. People are more and more accepting of Bitcoin every time it enters into a bull cycle. And the fact that Bitcoin has historically risen before and after halving suggests more upside for Bitcoin yet to come. But Charlie, wait, what about this new research piece claiming that Bitcoin will get to 115K after halving? Well, to summarize the argument here, well, this expectation, folks, is rooted in the historical impact of Bitcoin's halving events, which reduced the supply growth of new tokens by slashing miners' rewards in half, thereby potentially driving up the cryptocurrency's value if demand continues or increases. Post-halvings have led to notable price increases within a year, with an average surge of 400% observed after the first 3 halving events. Will we see another 400% increase? Well, markets seem to think we're going to see at least some increase that's massive. Of course, the market cap has gotten so big that 400% increase this time around, I think that might be a little bit too neck-breaking, and analyses of past events show an average price increase of 67.7% 6 months post-halving. Applying this pattern, CoinLedger, a crypto tax reporting firm, forecasts a potential rise to $115,733, contingent on Bitcoin being valued at around $69,000 at the time of halving. So again, when you're looking at all these arguments, the overall picture that I want you to take away is that people that are buying Bitcoin right now are under the impression that runs will continue happening well after halving. Now, is this going to be a buy the rumor and sell the news reaction? I do think it will be to some extent. After halving, you're probably going to get a little bit of a dippy dipito, but then after that, probably within a week or two, you're going to see that bought up again. So something to keep in mind there. And in terms of top ideas for crypto miner plays, I would say Mara, especially heading into this week. Mara's on the uptake, and I believe she'll cross into the 30s this week pretty easily and be on her way farther into halving. Okay, moving on, that leads us to the third part of this video and the main play that I want you to bring to your attention this week, AMD. Now, markets, in my view, do not appreciate AMD enough, which is why I want to reiterate it before this week. It's almost an atrocity how little they appreciate AMD. Now, you may say, but Charlie, how can you say they don't appreciate AMD? AMD has run so much, but they really don't appreciate it when you compare it to NVDA and the potential growth trajectory that AMD has in terms of the catch-up game with NVDA. The thing with AMD is that, quite frankly, it has a lot of room to see explosive growth because NVIDIA can't service all the demand there is. And so, quite frankly, businesses are going to need to go to the number 2 company just to get the needed chips and to stay competitive themselves. The wait time for NVIDIA's highly sought-after H100 80GB GPU for AI applications has indeed been significantly reduced. They used to say 8 to 11 months. Now it's just 3 to 4 months, but that's still a long time in the business world. Things are moving fast, and AMD is able to service them a lot faster, and their stuff is actually quite cheaper. Their chips are much cheaper. AMD's strategy focuses on capturing market share from NVIDIA by offering AI-centric chips at much more competitive prices. While NVIDIA's AI chips are known for their high cost, AMD aims to carve out a niche at much lower price points, potentially increasing its market share rapidly, and it looks like it's doing a pretty damn good job. We'll see in future reports. But the early stages of the AI race suggest a longer growth runway for AMD, especially given that, quite frankly, its market share has a lot to gain and NVDA has a lot to lose. I think NVDA is going to remain the top dog, and I think that it's still a buy itself. But AMD, in my view, is very, very underappreciated just because it does have a lot of potential to catch up and gain market share. I've read a lot of reports showing analysts highlighting AMD's potential to gain 10 to 15% market share in this industry over the next 5 years. That's a lot in an industry that's growing so rapidly. This market share gain could result in a significant bullish run for AMD stock, and I think it will, especially as the company capitalizes on the opportunity to provide more affordable options in the AI chip space. AMD, in my view, is an exciting buy right now due to its strategic advancements, complete pivot, which we talked about a couple weeks ago, into the GPU segment and focusing on that, and its ability to reach customers that need stuff now and can't wait a few months. In my view, over this coming quarter, especially heading into the next AMD earnings report, you're going to see a lot of eyes on AMD, and I think that it's going to fill in a lot of the gap. And this is why, for those of you who are in our options program, you know that we alerted AMD 200 strike calls expiring January 17th, 2025. Now, those already ran about 134% from our alert price, but I believe they have a lot farther to go, and that is the benefit of options, right? You can leverage the same move to a multiplied extent. Anyways, folks, that caps off today's video. Make sure to hit that ravishing like button and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.